Welcome in, everybody. We're diving deep today into Roberto Bolaño's 2666.
Ah, yes, 2666.
A novel so vast, it's often described as an experience rather than just, a straightforward story.
Definitely more of an experience.
We're lucky to have this in-depth analysis to guide us through this labyrinth.
Labyrinth is right.
So by the end, you'll be able to drop some serious knowledge bombs about its themes and Bolaño style.
You'll sound super smart.
Exactly. Maybe even enough to wow your book club.
Oh, yeah. Though honestly, they might be secretly relieved you did the heavy lifting on this one.
Haha, that's probably true. Okay, so let's jump right in. One of the big things that jumps out in 2666 is this whole search for meaning motif.
Yeah, front and center.
There's that whole subplot with the literary scholars on the hunt for this mysterious author, Benno von Archamboldi, like a literary treasure hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. And that becomes like this metaphor for our own, universal search for meaning.
Right, we're all kind of looking for something.
Always searching for something. It's like Bolaño is saying the pursuit itself is more important than actually finding the answer.
Can you give me an example of how he does that in the book?
But look at how he portrays those scholars. They're brilliant, right?
Yeah.
Dedicated, totally consumed by finding Archamboldi.
You can really feel their obsession.
But there's a sense that the more they search, the further they get from any real understanding.
Kind of like falling down the rabbit hole?
Exactly. The deeper they go, the less they actually know.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about how often we do that in our own lives.
Oh, totally. I know so many people who get lost in their rabbit holes. Genealogy, researching some obscure historical event. It's fascinating.
We're all searching for something, aren't we? Trying to make sense of the world. Bolaño's genius is that he flips the script on that classic quest narrative.
So he doesn't give us a nice, neat ending.
Nope. He leaves us with this unsettling feeling, like maybe some mysteries are better left unsolved.
He's really making us question our own ideas about truth and meaning.
Absolutely.
Right.
The bold move for a novelist.
It really is. Okay, so we have this search for meaning that doesn't quite pay off. Then there's this other huge theme in 2666 that we have to talk about.
You're talking about the violence, right?
Yeah, specifically the femicides in Ciudad Juárez.
That's where the novel takes a really dark turn.
Bolaño doesn't shy away from the brutality of those crimes, but he also avoids sensationalizing them.
He presents it all very starkly. Almost journalistic.
And that makes it even more disturbing.
It really does.
He's forcing us to confront the reality of these murders, to see the human cost. And I think for anyone who might not be familiar with the context, could you give us a little background on what was happening in Ciudad Juárez?
Sure. So basically, from the 1990s on, hundreds of women, most of them young factory workers, were murdered in Ciudad Juárez.
It was horrifying.
It was. And a lot of those cases are still unsolved. The lack of justice for the victims is a major theme in 2666.
It's a stark reminder that for some, violence isn't just a theoretical concept or a literary device. It's a terrifying daily reality.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So why do you think Bolaño chose to bring this very real tragedy into his novel? What purpose does it serve?
I think he's showing us how violence permeates every aspect of life.
Hmm.
It's not just confined to those dark alleys in Ciudad Juárez. It's in academia. It's in relationships. It's even in the way we think about ourselves.
It's everywhere.
And by putting this search for meaning alongside the reality of these femicides, Bolaño is forcing us to ask a really tough question. Can meaning truly exist in a world where such horrors happen?
That's a heavy question.
It is.
And I think it's one that stays with you long after you finish reading the book.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like he's saying these two things, the search for meaning and all this brutal violence, they're actually connected.
Exactly. You can't really understand one without the other, and that's where things get really interesting for the reader.
It's definitely a challenging book, but that's part of what makes it so powerful, right? It forces you to confront these really difficult questions.
And to sit with the discomfort.
Exactly. And, speaking of discomfort, I kept thinking about how Bolaño avoids giving us easy answers.
Oh, totally.
Can you talk about that a little more?
Sure. Well, take Archamboldi, for instance.
Yeah.
Everyone's searching for him,
Yeah.
right? He's this elusive German writer.
Yeah, practically a mythical figure.
He represents some kind of literary ideal.
The holy grail of literature.
And then we finally meet him in the last part of the book, and he's not what anyone expected.
He's not the answer to their prayers.
He's just a flawed ordinary in a lot of ways.
So the search itself was more important than actually finding him.
Exactly. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? The nature of meaning. Maybe it's not something you find. It's something you create through the act of searching and questioning.
I like that. So how does this whole idea of Archamboldi as a symbol connect to the rest of the book? What's Bolaño trying to say?
Well, I think on one level, he's playing with this idea of artistic genius. This belief that there are these brilliant minds out there who can explain the universe.
Right, like they have all the answers.
Exactly. But then he deconstructs that myth.
Yeah.
He shows us Archamboldi's humanity.
So he's bringing him down to earth.
Exactly.
Right.
And by doing that, Bolaño challenges us to think about our own expectations of art. What do we want from it?
Yeah.
What do we expect from artists?
Yeah, it's like he's saying even the greatest artists are still just people.
They have their own struggles, their own
Yeah.
flaws, and their work isn't necessarily about providing answers.
More about asking questions.
Right. Provoking us.
Yeah.
Making us see the world in new ways.
Which brings us back to 2666. This book is full of questions, unsettling truths. It doesn't sugarcoat the darkness,
Yep.
but it also offers these glimpses of beauty and hope.
It does, and I think that's what makes it such a powerful work of art. It's challenging,
Yeah.
but ultimately it's life-affirming.
Absolutely. So for our listeners who might be feeling a little intimidated by 2666, by its size and complexity, what advice would you give them?
Don't be scared.
Where should they even begin?
Oh, that's easy. Just start reading.
Just dive in.
Exactly. Don't worry about understanding everything right away. Just let Bolaño's words wash over you and see where they take you.
Like going on an adventure.
Exactly.
And it's okay to get lost along the way.
Totally. 2666 is a book that demands your attention, and it doesn't give up its secrets easily.
It's like a puzzle box. You have to keep turning it over and over until you start to see how the pieces fit together.
And even then, you might not have all the answers. But that's part of what makes it so rewarding. It's a book that stays with you long after you finish reading it.
So we've talked a lot about the challenges of reading 2666, but what about the rewards? What makes it worth the effort?
That's a good question. For me, it's the sheer brilliance of Bolaño's writing. His ability to weave together all these different threads. History, literature, philosophy, crime. It's incredible.
He manages to create this whole world.
And his characters are so vivid, so real. Even the minor ones.
You feel like people you could meet on the street.
Exactly. And even though there's so much darkness in the novel, there's also this sense of hope. It's like a light shining through the cracks.
Where does that hope come from?
I think it comes from the human spirit. Our ability to keep going, even when things are tough. Our capacity for love and compassion.
That's beautifully put. I think that's what makes 2666 so powerful. It reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there's still beauty to be found. And that searching for meaning is always worthwhile.
It is. It always is.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, but there's always more to explore with 2666.
Oh, definitely. It's a book that you can read multiple times, and each time you'll discover something new.
So to wrap things up, we want to leave you with a final thought-provoking question. Does the fact that literature can't fully capture reality make it less valuable? Or does it actually make it more valuable?
What do you think?
Think about that. And be sure to share your thoughts with us on social media. Use the hashtag 2666deepdive. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. And until next time, happy reading.
Yeah, I think approaching it as a journey is key. Don't get too hung up on trying to figure everything out. Just let yourself get immersed in Bolaño's writing and see where it leads you.
Yeah, I like that. Let it take you on an adventure.
Exactly. And it's okay to feel a little lost or confused even. It's part of the experience.
Oh, definitely. This is a book that really demands your full attention. And it's not going to give up all its secrets easily.
Right, like a puzzle box you keep turning over in your hands, trying to see how it all fits together.
Exactly. And even then, you may not have all the answers. Which is part of what makes it so intriguing, I think. It's a book that sticks with you long after you've finished it.
It really does. So we've talked about the challenges of 2666, but what about the rewards? What makes it worth all the effort?
Good question. I'd say, for me, it's the sheer brilliance of Bolaño's writing. His ability to weave together all these seemingly disparate elements. History, literature, philosophy, true crime. It's mind-blowing.
He creates this incredibly rich tapestry.
Yeah, exactly. And his characters, they're so vividly drawn, so human. Even the minor characters feel like real people with their own stories.
You feel like you could bump into them on the street.
Exactly. And despite all the darkness in the novel, there's also this underlying sense of hope, a kind of resilience that shines through.
Where do you think that hope comes from?
I think it comes from the human spirit itself.
Yeah.
Our ability to persevere even in the face of suffering. Our capacity for love and compassion even in the darkest of times.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. I think that's what makes 2666 such a powerful and ultimately life-affirming work. It reminds us that even when things are bleak, there's still beauty to be found. And that searching for meaning, even if we never find it, is never a waste of time.
Well said. I couldn't agree more.
So we've covered a lot of ground in our deep dive into 2666. But as we said, there's always more to discover with this book.
Oh yeah, layers upon layers.
It really rewards multiple readings.
Absolutely. Every time you come back to it, you're bound to find something new.
So as we wrap up our discussion, we want to leave you with one final thought-provoking question. Does the fact that literature can never truly capture the entirety of reality make it less valuable? Or does it actually enhance its value?